Before we begin, I would like to offer a brief advisory. The stories in this episode are real experiences from my years as an ICU nurse. They include discussions of severe illness and the consequences of addiction. They are shared not to sensationalize these events, but in the hope that someone may find understanding, encouragement, or a reason to seek help. Welcome to John's Tarot. Welcome everyone. I hope you're all doing well out there today. I have this will be my third episode in my Faces of Addiction. And today's episode is going to be about experiences I've had in the ICU, professional experiences I've had to deal with in regards to addiction. You know, when I was actively drinking, I never thought, I had no idea about the consequences of what I was doing. I mean, I was aware that there was some social problems. I had some social problems. I wasn't getting anywhere in life. I was failing in everything I was doing. I was aware of some of those things, but I really wasn't aware of the deeper problems.
So the pain.
Yeah. And that's what I'm going to talk about today, the deeper consequences of that type of activity and that type of life, because you have to be prepared to pay the price if you're going to be engaged in that activity. I'm going to tell a brief story before I do this. My father was dying. He's dying from alcoholism. This was like 37 years, so 34 years ago. He's dying from alcoholism. I tell this story quite frequently. Let me just say that he didn't understand how this happened to him. Alcoholic cirrhosis. How did I get alcoholic cirrhosis? And I told him, I said, you didn't get this from a toilet seat. You got this from a bar stool. Yeah, and he had no idea. And believe me, it wasn't funny at the time. It was tragic, and it just doesn't have to be that way. And so I clearly saw. I was about 3 years sober at the time, and I wasn't yet a nurse, but I clearly saw that if I wanted to continue in those types of habits and that type of lifestyle, this must be the price I'm willing to pay. Now, I really didn't understand the price I was willing, the full price of full consequences, until I got into a professional life on the ICU. And that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit today. Let me move over to my ICU page. There we go. A person on a ventilator. I want to say that this was not taken in my hospital. This was taken, I just pulled this off the internet and I put it up there. And you're saying, well, what are you doing that for? This is the price. This is part of the price you must pay. And let me go ahead and tell you a couple of stories. My first story is about, this wasn't even my patient. I was working on the ICU, and they admitted a guy, as a young guy, 28, 29-year-old guy. Turns out he had alcoholic cirrhosis, been a really crazy heavy drinker, really crazy heavy. I wasn't part of the case, but I knew the guy was in big trouble. He ended up like this. And that brought the family in, and the doctor had to talk with the family, and the doctor must have told them, hey, the guy didn't make it. He was terminal at 28 years old, and he ended up getting a tube like this. And I remember the looks on the family's face, because he was only like 28, 29, and they're like, how could this be? How could this be? He's only 28, 29. How could this be? And he had drank and used himself into this condition. And they were shocked. I remember the trauma, the look of pain, the look of confusion that was on the face of the family. So when we talk about our actions affect other people, and if you end up like this, how is this going to affect your family? How is this going to affect your loved ones? Nobody thinks about that. And I had never thought about that. I had never thought you could end up like this, but you can. And this person did, and they didn't survive it. Another story from the ICU. I was on ICU, I don't know, 3-4 years, and they sent this woman up from the ER, and she had, I think she had like esophageal varices. Without going through too much discussion, that is when you have your liver is backed up, and you grow these varices in your esophagus. They're like balloons. Like you ever see an old flat tire, a balloon tire, and the pressure is so high it makes the veins bubble in your esophagus, and eventually they burst from the pressure, and you just start bleeding out. And that's what was happening to this woman. They had an NG tube in her. She's begging me, and she was only about 42, 43, and she's, water, can I have water? And I know this woman has had an opportunity. 42, 43, you've had to hear about opportunities for recovery. You had to, and probably she had been exposed to these opportunities, but she chose her own path. She chose to do it her way. Water, and I go, well, I'll give her some ice chips because I got this tube down her nose. I'm just going to suck it out anyway. And I'm pretty clear that she's not going to make it, and the blood is coming out, and I'm pumping blood into her too. I'm giving her blood, and the blood is coming out almost as fast as I'm pumping it in. And she looks me in the eye, and she says, "Am I going to die?" And that was really hard for me. And I said, "Well, I don't know. I just don't know." And I continued my shift, and I moved on. And no, she didn't make it. She did not survive. But I do remember the family coming in, and the family came in, and they were drunk. I could smell booze on their breath, and they were like, "How could this be? How could this be? Do everything. They're half drunk, and I'm just like, okay, I'll do my best. My best wasn't enough, and she didn't make it, and that's one of the tales from the ICU. So there's a couple stories for you from the ICU and the consequences of this type of life. I mean, I'll tell you one more story. One more story. In these 12-step organizations, they talk about powerless over alcohol. I've been powerless over alcohol, and my life has become unmanageable. I've talked about it before at one of these meetings. I said, if you continue to do what you're doing, I'm going to send you to me, and you're going to look like this. And I will put tubes in you, advanced orifice management, and this is what you will look like. And we will do things to you that you don't want done. This is what happens when you're powerless over alcohol. And they will give me your life, and your life is unmanageable, and I will manage it for you. And that is not something you want. Believe me. So, what do I do? And this is a question about me, because it's hard for me too to deal with this stuff. Yeah, you're a professional, but just because I'm a professional doesn't mean I don't have any feelings. I don't have any grief. I don't have any human feelings. So, what do I do with the grief and knowledge I've experienced? And maybe you're a family member that's had to go through this. And what did you do with the grief and knowledge that you've been given? Maybe you've been given a little grief and knowledge to this podcast. So what do I do with the grief and knowledge I've been given as a nurse, as a human being? What do you do with the grief and knowledge you've been given as a family member, as somebody who's had a loved one who had to go through this? What do we do with the grief and knowledge we've been given? A little grief and knowledge today. Wasn't the best kind, but
The pain.
yeah. What do I do with the pain, the grief and knowledge I've been given? What do I do with the grief and knowledge I've been given? Just kind of shuffle them a little bit more. I felt like that wasn't enough. What do I do with the grief and knowledge I've been given? Okay, now we'll cut cards. What we get? The 7 of Swords. The 17 is the Star. And then the 9 of Pentacles. Okay, we'll throw some runes on these and do it independently. What do we do with the grief and knowledge we've been given when a loved one has to go through these types of things I talked about today? Odin, pray up, please help guide this reading. My first rune is Dagat. Oh, this rune is called Inkwise. I'll put it here. So the cup is the Seven of Swords. It usually has, and I usually don't read it as dishonesty, but we're talking about somebody who's been dishonest with themselves and dishonest with their condition and dishonest with the possibilities of the things that may have that may happen to them as a result of their behavior. Now, I remember one of the biggest dishonesties I had was, oh, it only affects me. I'm not hurting anybody. That's a lie. Of course, it hurts other people. Of course, my dishonesty affects others. Of course, what I've seen in the ICU, when people have to go through that, what's happened to the families, it affects other people, and that's what this rune has to go through. And if you're watching this podcast and you said, "Oh, the rune Ingwas has to do with a chrysalis and a new beginning and the begin." How can I say the end of the beginning? Maybe I've made a little dent in your armor. Maybe you're soliciting and saying, "Oh, maybe I need to reconsider this." Yeah, maybe this is the beginning of your healing from somebody else's dishonesty. And if you've been covering up for somebody like this, that's not helping them. It's only aiding in their dishonesty. And that the rune Ingwas is telling you, yeah, you need to listen. You need to listen up and be honest with what's going on and the possibilities of what could happen. And that is the truth of what the truth is that could happen. And then the card is the star, and the rune is. I go through this. Oh, the rune is Pertho. So the star. I got what do I do with the grief and knowledge? Well, in the background you see the ibis, the bird that is a god of wisdom in ancient Egypt, and one person's got one foot on the ground and one knee on the ground and the other foot in the water. That has to do with the water. Always has to do with the subconscious, the unconscious, the collective consciousness, and the star has to do with changing attitudes in this condition, changing concepts. What is my responsibility? What is not my responsibility in terms of your grief and sadness, and in terms of my grief? When I look at this, I've done my part as a clinician, but that's only my part as a clinician. I'm not responsible for everything, the concrete things that this person has done, or the hidden things, the subconscious things that have not been my responsibility to fix. We're all responsible for ourselves in this life. And that is what the star has to do with. And the star also has to do with the possibilities of your personal gifts and your personal things that you've been given in this life, and taking advantage of those. Don't let your relationship, your grief, hold you back from the gifts you've been given in this life. Go ahead and enjoy them. And then this rune is called Pertho, and it's life is a game. It's a dice cup. Looks like a dice cup. You roll the dice. You do the best you can. And I know that in my own life, I'm not responsible for outcomes. I'm responsible for doing the best I can. And that is and I roll the dice, and we'll see what the outcome is. And remember, you're not responsible for somebody else's life either. You do the best you can and roll the dice, and have to leave it up to them. And then the final card is the Nine of Pentacles, and I'll throw a rune on that. And that rune is Ensus. Ensus is the word, the breath of Odin. And the card, it has to do with what. So we've given you a nice little talk today. I think in my personal life, what do I do with this grief? I've been, you look at me and you wonder, how did this guy do it? How did he come about and become successful, relatively successful, recovered person? It took a lot of hard work. It took a lot of hard work, and it continues to take a little work every day. I have to put a little effort into it every day. It doesn't happen by accident. It happens by a little hard work. And your loved one, if they have to be willing to do the work in order to make the change. But it's been worth it. It's really been worth it. And then the rune is Anzus. Anzus has to do with the word. Listen. You're watching this podcast. Nothing happens by accident. You're not here today by accident. I'm giving you a message you were meant to hear. And I hope you take it to heart. And I hope your loved ones do okay. And I hope you do okay. Because that is going to be how it is for today.
Goodbye, Professor Marvel, and thanks a lot!
Well, it was my pleasure. I hope you all do well. Remember, we're part of a community, a worldwide community. Send me a little email from my website, or you can send it directly to john@johnstarot.net. A message, a story, a thought, a comment, and we'll do an issue on that every week. So until next week, until next time, be careful, be cool, be kind. Remember, have courage, find faith, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.